Money has always been a complex part of my story, something that once brought comfort and security, but also fear, shame, and uncertainty. It wasn't until my family lost everything that I truly realized what my relationship with money was really about. In this episode, I'll take you through that journey of transformation and share what I've learned about money, success, and resilience. This episode cuts deep. Let's dive in. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Clay Johnson, and today I want to share a deeply personal chapter of my life, one that shaped my perspective on money and its role in our lives. Growing up, I experienced the privilege of abundance, living a life where money provided comfort, opportunity, and a sense of stability. But that story took a dramatic turn when, at 19 years old, just when I was a freshman in college, my family lost it all. What followed was a journey of resilience, self-discovery, and reshaping my understanding of success, all while grappling with a scarcity mindset in a world where security was no longer guaranteed. When I was growing up in a small town in South Carolina, money was something we never worried about, or at least that's how it seemed to me as a kid. My family was financially comfortable, and we lived in what I thought was a picture-perfect life. We had a beautiful home in the best neighborhood, family vacations, and the freedom to pursue our interests without thinking twice about the cost. My brother, sister, and I never wanted for anything. I always cringed when people called us spoiled, but we were. Fortunately, I don't think we were spoiled brats. Back then, I equated money with security. It was the foundation of our lives, a silent force that ensured stability and comfort. But as I would come to learn, money can be as fleeting as it is powerful. For decades, my father and grandfather had built a thriving grain business that provided the foundation for the life my family and I lived. But at 19, everything I knew came crashing down. My family's financial stability was shattered. A string of unfortunate events stripped away everything we had. One day, I lived in a world where money felt secure, and the next, it felt as though the ground had been ripped out from under us. The house I grew up in and my mother's car were taken away in what felt like an instant. I vividly remember the anxiety and shame that accompanied that loss. Suddenly, conversations about money were no longer something to avoid. They became urgent, filled with stress and uncertainty. My parents, who had always seemed so in control, were now struggling to rebuild while I was forced to confront the reality that the life I had known was gone. In many ways, being away at college, just a few hours away from my small town, felt like a relief. It gave me space to escape the scrutiny of people who knew what was happening to my family. During that time, I had to grow up quickly and face the harsh reality that I was solely responsible for my future. No one was coming to save me. I worked multiple jobs while finishing college, determining to make ends meet as best as I could. After graduation, I was fortunate to land a job with a telecom company outside of Washington, D.C., making $25,000 a year. I'll never forget being 22, driving from South Carolina to Washington with all my belongings packed in the back of my SUV, ready to begin my new life as a working adult. I had less than $500 in my bank account, most of which was graduation money, and a pile of credit card debt and bill debt from college that I couldn't keep up with. Success seemed so out of reach. My only lifeline was the extended family in the area who graciously offered me a place to stay while I got on my feet. To this day, I remain deeply grateful for their generosity. Unfortunately, my financial situation continued to worsen, and there was no one to turn to. By this time, my parents had divorced and were still trying to figure out how to support themselves and my siblings. Over the 8 years I lived in Washington, D.C., I continued to rack up credit card debt, struggled to pay my bills, including rent, and eventually found myself trapped in payday loans. For those of you unfamiliar, a payday loan is a short-term, high-interest loan borrowed against a borrower's next paycheck to cover urgent expenses until their next income arrives. Things got so bad that most of my salary went to repaying these loans, while my living expenses took a back seat. I had to borrow money from friends just to survive. The whole experience left me feeling embarrassed, scared, and anxious. And unfortunately, those emotions became deeply tied to money. or the lack of it. Fortunately, when I was around 30, after years of financial struggles, I started to see a shift. It wasn't a sudden change, but rather the result of small steps, hard work, perseverance, and a commitment to rebuilding my financial foundation. I began earning enough to finally start paying off my debts, and while the weight of those years still lingered, I felt a sense of relief. The real turning point was when I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to thrive. But it wasn't without its challenges. The damage to my credit, though, was a heavy price to pay. I had spent years juggling debt, bills, and constant stress, and repairing that took time. The emotional scars of those years didn't disappear overnight. However, as I worked through the recovery process, I found a deeper sense of financial stability, which gave me a new outlook on life. One of the biggest lessons I learned was the importance of resilience. It wasn't just about getting back to where I was. It was about moving forward, learning from the past, and shifting my mindset. I began to see money for what it truly is, a tool, not a definition of success. That shift allowed me to rebuild my life in a way that was grounded in values rather than fear. Today, many years later, my relationship with money has evolved in profound ways. While the scars of my past still occasionally surface, I've learned to approach money with a healthier mindset. It's no longer a source of constant anxiety or fear. Instead, I view it as a tool, one that has the potential to enhance my life, create opportunities, and support the people and experiences that truly matter. That said, it's a work in progress. Every now and then I find myself slipping back into that scarcity mindset, especially when I feel pressure at work or face financial uncertainties. There are times when I get overly critical of myself, driven by the fear of losing everything again. And even though I'm aware that these thoughts aren't grounded in reality, they're still hard to shake. But I've come to accept that perfection doesn't define success. I've learned to be kinder to myself, to celebrate the progress I've made, and to give myself credit for resilience I've shown. I remind myself that I've already overcome so much, and that the lessons I've learned about money and life are valuable far beyond the balance in my bank account. Today, I focus on living with intention, investing in experiences that bring joy and connection, and creating a life full of meaning, relationships, and purpose. So, what about you? How has your relationship with money been shaped by your experiences? Have you faced challenges that forced you to rethink what money means to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Send me a message or leave a comment if this resonates with you. Remember, the more we share our stories, the more we realize we're not alone. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it with someone who might need a little inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going and continue exploring life's challenges together. Until next time, take care and keep striving for an extraordinary life.